The sound of sobbing carried across the Wyoming prairie like a wounded animal's cry, and Owen Preston reined his horse to a halt, every muscle in his body tensing as he scanned the horizon for the source of such desperate anguish. He had been riding for 3 days straight from Montana, heading toward Quartz Hill, Wyoming, a small mining town where he hoped to find work breaking horses for the local ranchers. His supplies were running low, his body ached from sleeping on hard ground, and his patience had worn thin from the constant wind that seemed determined to strip the skin from his face. But that sound, that heartbroken weeping, struck something deep in his chest that made everything else fade into insignificance. Owen was 26 years old, weathered by years of working cattle drives and breaking wild mustangs, but he had never hardened completely to suffering. His mother had raised him to be respectful and kind before consumption had taken her when he was 15. His father, a stern ranch foreman, had taught him to be strong and self-reliant before a fall from a spooked horse had broken his neck 2 years later. Owen had been alone ever since, drifting from job to job, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots. He dismounted carefully, his boots hitting the dusty earth with barely a sound as years of practice had taught him to move quietly. His hand instinctively went to the Colt revolver at his hip, not out of aggression but caution. The year was 1882, and Wyoming territory was still wild enough that a man had to be prepared for anything. Bandits, rustlers, and worse roamed these lands, preying on anyone foolish enough to travel alone. The crying grew louder as he moved around a cluster of large boulders, and then he saw her. A woman knelt in the dust, her hands clasped together so tightly that her knuckles had gone white, her face turned upward toward the endless blue sky. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins and hung in tangles around her face, and her simple calico dress was stained with dirt and what looked like dried blood. She was praying with such fervent intensity that she had not heard his approach. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please send someone, anyone. I cannot do this alone. I do not know which way to go. I do not know what to do. Papa always said you would provide, but I am so scared. Please just show me a sign. Send me help." Owen stood frozen, struck by something he could not name. It was not just her beauty, though even in her distressed state he could see she was lovely. It was not just the desperation in her voice, though that alone would have moved him to action. It was something deeper, something that resonated in his very bones like a bell being struck. This woman was praying for help, and he had been brought here at this exact moment to provide it. The certainty of it washed over him like a revelation. He cleared his throat gently, not wanting to startle her. She gasped and spun around, her eyes wide with fear, scrambling backward until her back hit the boulder behind her. Her hand went to something in her pocket, and Owen raised both hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "Madam," he said quietly, keeping his voice as calm and unthreatening as he could manage, "I do not mean to frighten you. I heard you crying and wanted to make sure you were all right." She stared at him with eyes the color of honey in sunlight, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. He could see her evaluating him, taking in his dusty clothes, his worn hat, the gun at his hip, the horse waiting patiently behind him. Her hand remained in her pocket, and he had no doubt she had some kind of weapon there, probably a small knife or derringer. "Who are you?" she demanded, though her voice shook. "What do you want?" "My name is Owen Preston," he said, still keeping his hands visible. "I am just passing through, heading to Quartz Hill. I heard you crying and thought maybe you needed help. Are you hurt? That looks like blood on your dress." She glanced down at herself as if just remembering the state she was in. Her face crumpled for a moment before she fought to regain control. "It is not my blood," she said quietly. "It is my father's. He died 3 days ago. Owen felt his heart clench. "I am sorry for your loss, madam." "That is a terrible thing. Were you robbed?" She shook her head and a tear tracked down her dusty cheek. "No, we were traveling to Quartz Hill. My father heard there was work there and we needed a fresh start after my mother passed last winter in Kansas. But Papa's heart, it just gave out. The doctor in our last town had warned him about overexertion, but he insisted on making the journey. We were so close, he said. Just a few more days." Her voice broke again. "He collapsed while we were making camp. He died in my arms, asking me to forgive him for leaving me alone." Owen slowly lowered his hands. "Where is he now?" "I buried him as best I could," she said, gesturing vaguely to the east. "There were rocks enough to cover him properly so the animals would not disturb him. I marked it with his name carved into wood. Wendell Greene. He deserved better than an unmarked grave in the middle of nowhere. Wendell Greene. So her name was likely something starting with a similar initial." Owen filed that information away as he considered what to do. A woman alone in this territory was in serious danger, and from the look of her, she had been without proper food or water for those 3 days. "Miss Greene," he said gently, "when did you last eat?" She blinked at him as if the question made no sense. "I do not know. I had some dried meat yesterday, I think, maybe the day before. We were running low on supplies. And water. There is a stream nearby. I have been drinking from there." At least she had not added dehydration to her troubles. Owen made a decision, though in truth, it did not feel like a decision at all. It felt like the only possible course of action, as inevitable as sunrise. "Miss Greene, I cannot leave you out here alone. It is not safe. I am heading to Quartz Hill myself, and I would be honored if you would allow me to escort you there. I have enough supplies to share, and my horse can carry both of us if you are too tired to walk." She studied him for a long moment, and he could see the conflict in her face. She had been raised to be cautious of strange men, as any sensible woman would be, but she was also desperate and intelligent enough to know her options were limited. A woman alone would not survive long out here, not with winter approaching in a few months and supplies running out. "Why would you help me?" she asked finally. "You do not know me." "Because you were praying for help and I heard you," Owen said simply. "Because it is the right thing to do, because my mother raised me to be a gentleman and no gentleman would leave a lady in distress." He paused, then added, "And because something tells me I am meant to help you. I cannot explain it better than that." Something shifted in her expression, a slight softening around her eyes. "I was praying," she whispered. "I was asking God to send me someone to show me the way. And then you appeared." "Then maybe I am your answer," Owen said quietly. She was silent for another long moment, then slowly removed her hand from her pocket. She did not stand yet, but the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. "My name is Willa," she said. "Willa Greene. I am 19 years old and I am completely alone in the world now. I have no other family, no money except for a few coins, and no idea what I am going to do when I reach Quartz Hill." "Well, Miss Willa Greene," Owen said, finally allowing himself a small smile. "One problem at a time. First, we get you fed and make sure you are healthy enough to travel. Then we get you safely to Quartz Hill. After that, we can figure out the rest." She searched his face as if looking for deception or hidden motives, but Owen kept his expression open and honest. He had nothing to hide. He was a simple cowboy with no grand prospects, but he was honest and capable, and right now, this woman needed someone exactly like him. Finally, Willa nodded and slowly got to her feet. She swayed slightly, and Owen quickly moved forward to steady her, his hand gentle on her elbow. She was taller than he had expected, coming up to his shoulder and up close. He could see the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She looked like she had not slept properly in days, which she probably had not. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I accept your help." Owen felt that strange certainty wash over him again, stronger this time. This woman, this moment, it all meant something important. He did not believe in fate or destiny, had always thought such things were foolishness. But standing here with Willa Greene's arm under his hand and her grateful eyes on his face, he found himself reconsidering. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Your camp must have some belongings you need to gather." "Yes," she said. "It is not far, just past those rocks where I buried Papa." They walked together slowly, Owen keeping pace with her unsteady steps. His horse followed behind, well trained enough not to need leading. As they rounded the rocks, Owen saw a small campsite that spoke of hasty organization and grief. A single bedroll lay near a cold fire pit. A small trunk sat open, revealing a few dresses and personal items. A wagon tongue jutted up from the ground, and Owen realized with a sinking heart that the wagon itself must have broken down. "What happened to your wagon?" he asked. "The axle broke 2 days before Papa died," Willa said dully. "We thought we could fix it, but we did not have the right tools. Papa was trying to jury-rig something when his heart gave out. I had to leave it behind. I could not pull it by myself, and I thought perhaps I could walk to Quartz Hill, but I got turned around. I have been wandering for 3 days, trying to figure out which direction to go." Owen looked at the abandoned wagon with regret. It probably contained most of their worldly possessions, but there was no way to salvage it now. "What is in the trunk?" "Clothes, mostly. A few of my mother's things. A Bible, some letters." Willa's voice was hollow. "Nothing of value to anyone but me." "Then we take it," Owen decided. "My horse is strong. He can manage it tied behind the saddle. Is there anything else you need?" Willa looked around the sad little campsite, and Owen saw tears well up in her eyes again. "There is a photograph," she said. "In the wagon. It is the only picture I have of my parents together. Could we retrieve it?" "Of course." They walked to the broken wagon, and Owen climbed inside while Willa waited. The interior was a jumbled mess of broken furniture, scattered clothing, and overturned crates. He found the photograph in a small tin box tucked under what had once been a seat. The image showed a stern-looking man with kind eyes, and a gentle-faced woman with Willa's same honey-colored eyes, standing together in their Sunday best. Owen carefully tucked it into his shirt pocket to keep it safe. When he emerged, Willa was crying silently, tears streaming down her face unchecked. Owen climbed down and stood beside her, not touching, just offering his presence. He understood grief. He had lost both parents and knew the particular ache of being alone in the world. "He was a good man," Willa said through her tears. "He was not perfect, but he loved me and Mama so much. He worked himself to death trying to provide for us. When Mama got sick, he spent every penny we had on doctors and medicine. When she died anyway, it broke something in him. He thought if we started over somewhere new, the grief would be easier. But you cannot outrun grief, can you?" "No, madam," Owen said quietly. "You surely cannot. But you can keep living despite it. You can honor their memory by building a good life, the kind they would have wanted for you." Willa turned to look at him, really look at him, for the first time. Her eyes traveled over his face, taking in his strong jaw, his blue eyes, the lines around his mouth that came from years of squinting against the sun. He was not a handsome man in the classical sense, but his face was honest and open, and Willa seemed to find something there that reassured her. "You are not what I expected when I prayed for help," she said. "What did you expect? I do not know. An angel, maybe, or a wagon train passing by. Or perhaps a nearby town I had missed seeing," she laughed weakly. "Not a cowboy appearing out of nowhere like some kind of miracle. I am just a man," Owen said, "but I am here and I am willing to help. Sometimes that is miracle enough." They gathered Willa's belongings, and Owen secured the trunk behind his saddle with practiced efficiency. He offered Willa his canteen, and she drank gratefully. Then he pulled out some jerky and hardtack from his saddlebags, insisting she eat even though she protested. She was not hungry. She needed her strength. While she ate, Owen walked to where she had indicated her father was buried. The grave was as she had described, carefully covered with rocks and marked with a piece of wood that had Willa Greene, beloved father, carved into it with what must have been painstaking effort. Owen removed his hat and stood in silence for a moment, offering a prayer for a man he had never met, but who had raised a daughter brave enough to survive alone for 3 days in the wilderness. When he returned, Willa had finished eating and was attempting to tidy her appearance. She had pinned her hair back up and tried to brush some of the dust from her dress. Owen pretended not to notice the bloodstains that stubbornly remained. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. "Yes," she said, though her voice trembled. "I do not want to leave him here alone, but I know he is not truly here anymore. He would want me to keep going." "We can come back," Owen offered. "Once you are settled in Quartz Hill, if you want to have him moved to a proper cemetery, I will help you arrange it." Willa looked at him with surprise and something else, something softer. "You would do that?" "I said I would help you, Miss Greene. I meant it." They mounted his horse together, Willa sitting in front of Owen so he could keep her steady if she swooned from exhaustion. She was stiff at first, uncomfortable with the necessary closeness, but as the horse began to walk, she gradually relaxed. Owen kept one arm loosely around her waist to ensure she did not fall, and tried not to notice how perfectly she seemed to fit against him. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the steady clop of hooves, the creak of leather, and the ever-present Wyoming wind. Owen kept them heading southwest, following the landmarks he knew would lead them to Quartz Hill. With luck, they would reach the town by nightfall tomorrow, but that depended on whether Willa could handle a full day of riding. She was already exhausted, and Owen decided they would stop early to let her rest properly. "Tell me about yourself, Mr. Preston," Willa said suddenly, breaking the silence. "If I am to trust you with my life, I should know something about you beyond your name." Owen appreciated her practical nature. Despite her grief and exhaustion, she still had the presence of mind to gather information. "Not much to tell," he said. "I am 26 years old, born in Missouri, raised all over the West as my family followed work. My father was a ranch foreman and my mother took in sewing. They both passed when I was young, and I have been on my own since I was 18. I work with horses mostly, breaking and training them. I am good at it." "Why were you traveling alone?" "I heard there was work in Quartz Hill. A rancher there needs someone to break a string of wild Mustangs he bought. The pay is decent, and I thought maybe I would stay for a while if the work was good." He paused. "I have been drifting for a long time. It gets tiresome after a while, never having a place to call home." "I understand that," Willa said quietly. "We moved around a lot too after Mama died. Papa could not seem to settle anywhere. He kept thinking the next town would be better, that the next job would be the one that finally brought us stability. But peace does not come from changing your location. It has to come from inside yourself. That is wise for someone so young. Grief makes you wise," she said. "Whether you want it to or not." They fell silent again, but it was a more comfortable silence now. Owen found himself hyper-aware of every point where Willa's body touched his, the warmth of her back against his chest, the way her hair smelled like dust, and something floral that must have been soap from weeks ago. It was inappropriate to notice such things, he told himself sternly. The woman had just buried her father. She needed his help and protection, not his attraction, But that certainty he had felt when he first saw her praying had not faded. If anything, it had grown stronger. This woman was important. This meeting was important. Owen did not know how or why, but he trusted the feeling the way he trusted his instincts about horses. Some things you just knew. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, Owen started looking for a good place to make camp. He found a spot near a small creek, sheltered by a rocky overhang that would provide some protection if the weather turned. He helped Willa down from the horse, steadying her when her legs proved unsteady from the long ride. "I am sorry," she said, embarrassed. "I am not used to riding so much." "You have nothing to apologize for," Owen assured her. "You have been through an ordeal. Rest while I set up camp." "I can help," she protested, but Owen shook his head. "You can help by sitting down and not collapsing. I have done this 1,000 times. It will go faster if I just do it myself." Willa looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. She sank down onto a rock and watched as Owen efficiently unsaddled his horse, gathered firewood, and started a small fire. He filled his cooking pot with water from the creek and set it to boil, then pulled out coffee grounds and more hardtack, along with some beans and a small portion of salted pork. As he worked, he snuck glances at Willa. In the golden light of the setting sun, she looked ethereal, like something not quite real. Her eyes were distant, watching the fire without really seeing it, and Owen guessed she was reliving the past few days over and over. He wanted to say something comforting, but what comfort could he offer? He was a stranger, and her grief was too fresh for words to help much. Instead, he focused on making the best meal he could with his limited supplies. The beans and pork simmered together, filling the air with a savory smell that made his own stomach growl. He realized he had not eaten much today either, too focused on making distance and then on helping Willa. When the food was ready, he served her a generous portion on a tin plate and handed it to her with a fork. "Eat," he said firmly. "All of it. You need your strength." Willa took the plate obediently and began to eat. After the first few bites, she seemed to realize how hungry she actually was and ate with more enthusiasm. Owen served himself and settled on the opposite side of the fire, giving her space while still staying close enough to help if she needed anything. "This is good," Willa said after she had cleared half her plate. "Thank you." "Just trail food," Owen said with a shrug. "Nothing fancy." "It is the best meal I have had in days," she said. "Everything tastes like dust when you are alone and scared." They ate in companionable silence, and Owen poured them both coffee once the meal was finished. Willa wrapped her hands around the warm cup and stared into the flames. "What will I do in Quartz Hill?" she asked suddenly. "I have been trying not to think about it, but I need to face reality. I have no skills except basic housekeeping and some sewing. My father never believed women should work outside the home, so I have no experience with employment. I have almost no money and no prospects. I am completely lost." Owen considered his words carefully. "Quartz Hill is a growing town. There is always need for seamstresses, laundresses, cooks. The boarding houses are always looking for help. You could find work if you need it. And liveware." Willa asked. "I cannot afford a room." "One step at a time," Owen said. "We get you to town, we find you a safe place to stay, and then we figure out work. I will help you, Miss Greene. I told you that, and I meant it." "But why?" she asked, turning to look at him with those honey-colored eyes. "You do not know me. You owe me nothing. Why are you being so kind?" Owen met her gaze steadily. "Because when I heard you praying, something in me knew I was meant to help you. I know that sounds foolish, and I have never been a man who believed in signs or fate, but I cannot deny what I felt. What I still feel. You asked for help and I was brought to you. Maybe that is all the reason I need." Willa stared at him for a long moment, and Owen saw tears gathering in her eyes again. "I prayed for direction," she whispered. "I asked God to send me someone to show me the way. And then you appeared as if summoned. What does that mean?" "It means you are not alone," Owen said gently. "It means someone heard you, whether that was God or just the universe or plain luck. It means you have help now, and you do not have to figure everything out by yourself." A tear slipped down Willa's cheek, and she wiped it away impatiently. "I am sorry. I seem to be crying constantly. I am not usually such a watering pot." "You just lost your father," Owen said. "You are allowed to cry. Grief is not something to be ashamed of." "My father always said crying was a waste of water and energy," Willa said with a bitter little laugh. "He said it solved nothing and showed weakness, but I cannot seem to stop." "Your father was wrong," Owen said bluntly. "Crying is how the heart heals. Holding it in just makes the pain worse." "Trust me, I know." Willa looked at him with curiosity. "You cried when your parents died." "I cried for weeks after my mother passed," Owen admitted. "And when my father died 2 years later, I cried again, even though we had never been close. Crying did not bring them back, but it helped me accept they were gone. There is no shame in it." "I wish my father had been more like you," Willa said softly. "He was a good man, but he was hard. He did not understand emotions. After Mama died, he never spoke of her. He just packed us up and started moving as if he could leave the grief behind with her grave. But it followed us everywhere." "Grief is faithful that way," Owen said. "It does not leave until it is ready, no matter how far you run." They sat in silence for a while longer, sipping their coffee and watching the fire. The stars began to emerge overhead, brilliant and countless in the clear Wyoming sky. A coyote howled in the distance, and Owen's horse snorted softly, unbothered. It was a peaceful evening, all things considered. "You should sleep," Owen said eventually. "I will keep watch." "You need rest too," Willa protested. "I will sleep later. Right now you need it more than I do. Take my bedroll. It is clean and warmer than yours." "I cannot take your bed," Willa argued. But Owen was already pulling out his bedroll and spreading it near the fire, far enough away to avoid sparks but close enough to stay warm. "Please do not argue," he said. "You are exhausted and you need proper rest. I have slept on the ground many times. One more night will not hurt me." Willa looked like she wanted to protest further, but her exhaustion was too great. She nodded reluctantly and settled onto the bedroll, pulling the blanket up to her chin. Within minutes, her breathing had evened out, and Owen knew she was asleep. He sat by the fire, keeping watch as he had promised, and tried not to think about how right it felt to have Willa nearby, safe and protected. He had only met her hours ago, but already he felt a fierce protectiveness toward her that surprised him with its intensity. She was not his responsibility, not really, but he could not shake the feeling that she was meant to be. The night passed slowly, and Owen let himself doze lightly while keeping his senses alert for danger. Nothing disturbed them except the normal sounds of the prairie at night. When the first light of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, Owen stood and stretched, feeling the stiffness in his muscles from sitting so long. Willa was still asleep, and Owen let her rest while he rekindled the fire and started coffee. He had some cornmeal left, and he mixed it with water to make a simple porridge that would fill their stomachs and provide energy for the long ride ahead. The smell of coffee must have woken Willa, because she stirred and sat up, looking confused for a moment before memory returned. Owen saw the moment it all came back to her, saw the grief settle over her face like a veil. "Good morning," he said gently. "I made breakfast. It is not much, but it will keep us going." Willa accepted the food with quiet thanks, and they ate in silence as the sun rose higher. Owen noticed she looked better this morning, less hollow-eyed and fragile. The sleep and food had helped, though she was still pale and obviously grieving. "How far to Quartz Hill?" she asked as they prepared to leave. "If we make good time, we should reach it by late afternoon," Owen said. "The terrain is fairly easy from here." They mounted up again, and Owen was pleased to see Willa settled more comfortably against him today, less stiff and uncertain. They rode steadily through the morning, stopping occasionally to rest the horse and stretch their legs. Owen pointed out landmarks as they went, teaching Willa how to navigate by the sun and the shape of the hills. "Why are you teaching me this?" she asked at one point. "Because knowledge is power," Owen said. "If you know how to find your way, you will never be lost again. You will never have to feel that panic of not knowing which direction to go." Willa was quiet for a moment. "You are a good teacher," she said finally. "I had a good mother," Owen replied. "She believed everyone should know how to take care of themselves, men and women alike. She taught me to cook and sew and keep house. She said a real man was not afraid of learning anything useful. She sounds wonderful. She was. I miss her every day." As the afternoon wore on, they began to see signs of civilization. First, a distant fence line, then cattle grazing on the range. Finally, a road, rutted and dusty but clearly well-traveled. Owen followed it, and soon they crested a hill and saw Quartz Hill spread out in the valley below. It was not a large town, but it was prosperous-looking, with neat wooden buildings lining a main street and several side streets branching off. Owen could see a church steeple, a schoolhouse, what looked like a hotel, several saloons, various shops and houses scattered on the outskirts. Smoke rose from chimneys, and even from this distance they could hear the faint sounds of activity. "There it is," Owen said. "Your destination." Willa was silent, staring down at the town. Owen wondered what she was thinking, what she was feeling. Was she relieved to have finally arrived? Terrified of the uncertain future that awaited her there? Both, probably. "I am scared," she admitted quietly. "That is natural," Owen said. "But you are brave. You survived alone for 3 days. You buried your father by yourself. You trusted a stranger to help you. That takes courage." "Or desperation," Willa said with a weak laugh. "Sometimes they are the same thing," Owen said. "Come on, let us go find you a place to stay." They rode into Quartz Hill as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the street. People stopped to stare at them, curious about the dusty cowboy and the bedraggled woman riding together. Owen ignored the looks and headed straight for the largest building in town, which had a sign proclaiming it to be the Frontier Hotel. He dismounted and helped Willa down, then tied his horse to the hitching post outside. "Wait here a moment," he said. "Let me see about getting you a room." He went inside and found himself in a neat lobby with polished wood floors and a desk where a middle-aged woman sat reviewing a ledger. She looked up as he approached, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Help you?" she asked. "Yes, madam, I need a room for the lady outside. She has just arrived in town and needs a safe place to stay." The woman's eyes narrowed. "I run a respectable establishment, Mr. Preston, Owen Preston. And the lady is completely respectable, I assure you. She is Miss Willa Greene. Her father passed away during their journey here, and I found her alone on the prairie. I escorted her to safety, and now she needs a room while she figures out her next steps." The woman's expression softened slightly. "I see. That is very unfortunate. However, rooms are not free, Mr. Preston. Can Miss Greene pay?" "How much for a week?" Owen asked. $3, including 2 meals a day." Owen pulled out his small leather purse and counted out the coins, wincing internally as he handed over a significant portion of his remaining money. But Willa needed a safe place more than he needed a financial cushion. The woman's eyebrows rose. "You are paying for her room?" "I am." "Is that a problem?" "No, sir, just unusual." She wrote something in her ledger. Room 4, upstairs, second door on the right. It has a bed, a washstand, and a chest of drawers. The privy is out back. Meals are served at 7 in the morning and 6 in the evening in the dining room through that door. No men allowed upstairs after 8 o'clock. No drinking, no gambling, no unseemly behavior. Break my rules and you are out with no refund. Understood? Understood, madam. Thank you. Owen took the key and went back outside to find Willa standing exactly where he had left her, looking lost and overwhelmed. He smiled reassuringly and held up the key. You have a room for a week. That should give you time to figure out your next steps. Willa's eyes widened. You paid for a room. Mr. Preston, I cannot let you do that. You have already done so much. It is done, Owen said firmly. Come on, let us get your trunk upstairs and then you can wash up and rest properly for the first time in days. He collected her trunk from his horse and carried it inside and up the stairs, with Willa following behind. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed covered in a faded quilt, a simple washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a chest of drawers against one wall. A small window looked out over the street. Owen set the trunk down and turned to find Willa staring around the room with tears in her eyes again. I have not had a proper room since we left Kansas, she said. Papa and we camped most nights to save money. This is wonderful. I am glad you like it, Owen said. I will leave you to settle in. Come downstairs when you are ready and we can talk about what comes next. He started to leave, but Willa reached out and caught his sleeve. Mr. Preston, wait. I do not know how to thank you. You saved my life. You brought me here safely. You paid for my room. I have no way to repay you. Owen covered her hand with his, feeling the calluses on her fingers from hard work. You do not need to repay me, Miss Greene. I did what any decent person would do. No, Willa said firmly. Most people would have ridden past. Most people would not have cared about a stranger's prayers. You are special, Mr. Preston. I may not understand why God sent you to me, but I am grateful he did. Owen found himself lost in her honey-colored eyes, feeling that pull again, that certainty that this woman was important. Maybe we were meant to find each other, he said quietly. Maybe your prayer and my wandering were leading us both to the same place. Willa did not pull her hand away, and neither did Owen. They stood there for a long moment, connected by touch and something deeper, something neither of them fully understood yet. Finally, Owen gently released her hand and stepped back, reminding himself that Willa was grieving and vulnerable, and the last thing she needed was a cowboy making presumptions. Get some rest, he said. I will be downstairs if you need anything. He left before he could do something foolish like pull her into his arms or tell her she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Those thoughts were inappropriate. She needed a friend and protector, not a suitor. Downstairs, Owen asked the proprietress about his job prospect. I am looking for a rancher who needs horses broken. Do you know where I might find him? You are probably looking for Mr. Henry Winters, the woman said. He owns the biggest spread around here, about 5 miles west of town. He bought a string of Mustangs last month and has been complaining about needing someone skilled enough to break them. Thank you, madam. I appreciate the information. You are the one who brought that poor girl in, the woman asked. Yes, madam. That was good of you. Not many men would have bothered. She studied him for a moment. You seem like a decent sort, Mr. Preston. If you are looking for work in town while you are here, my husband could use help around the hotel. We can offer room and board plus $1 a day for general handyman work. Owen considered. The job breaking horses would pay more, but it would also take him away from town, away from Willa. The thought of leaving her alone here did not sit well with him. That is a generous offer, madam. Could I think on it and let you know tomorrow? Of course. The name is Margaret Patterson. My husband, John, is around back if you need anything heavy moved." Owen thanked her and went back outside to tend to his horse. As he brushed down the animal and made sure it had food and water, he thought about his situation. He had come to Quartz Hill for work, and he still needed employment. But everything had changed the moment he found Willa praying in the dust. His plans, his priorities, everything had shifted. He wanted to stay near her. He wanted to make sure she was safe and cared for. He wanted to watch that grief-stricken look fade from her eyes and see her smile. He wanted things he had no right to want from a woman he had just met. "You are in trouble, Preston," he muttered to himself. "Serious trouble." His horse whickered softly as if in agreement. An hour later, Willa came downstairs wearing a fresh dress from her trunk, her hair neatly pinned up, her face scrubbed clean. She looked like a different person, younger and less haunted, though the sadness still lingered in her eyes. Owen, who had been sitting in the lobby waiting, stood immediately. "You look much better," he said. "I feel more human," Willa admitted. "I used almost the entire pitcher of water washing up, but it was worth it. I cannot tell you what a relief it is to be clean again." "Would you like to take a walk?" Owen asked. "I can show you around town, help you get your bearings." "I would like that very much." They walked out into the early evening, and Owen began pointing out the important buildings. The general store, the bank, the doctor's office, the church, the school. Quartz Hill was a well-established town, serving not just its own residents but also the miners and ranchers in the surrounding area. It had the feeling of a place that was going to last, unlike some of the boom and bust towns that sprang up and disappeared within a few years. As they walked, people nodded to Owen and stared curiously at Willa. Small-town gossip being what it was, everyone would know about the mysterious woman who arrived with the cowboy by tomorrow. Owen made sure to keep a respectful distance from Willa, not wanting to give anyone reason to think poorly of her. "Mrs. Patterson mentioned there is usually work for seamstresses here," Owen said as they passed a small shop with dressmaking painted on the window. "The woman who runs this shop is getting older. She might need help." "I can sew," Willa said. "Mama taught me. I am not as skilled as a professional, but I am competent." "That is a start. We can inquire tomorrow if you like." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, and Owen found himself very aware of Willa beside him. She was tall for a woman, which he liked. She did not have to crane her neck to look at him when they talked. Her movements were graceful despite her exhaustion, and she had an air of quiet dignity that spoke of good upbringing. "Tell me more about yourself," Owen said. "What was your life like before all this?" Willa was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "It was ordinary, I suppose. We lived in a small town in Kansas, and Papa worked as a clerk in the general store. Mama took in sewing to help make ends meet. We were not wealthy, but we were comfortable. I helped Mama with her sewing and kept house. I went to school until I was 16, which was longer than most girls. I liked reading and learning, but Papa did not see the point of too much education for a woman." "Did you have friends?" "A few. But after Mama got sick, I did not have much time for socializing. I spent all my time caring for her and helping with the sewing work so we would not lose income. By the time she died, most of my friends had married or moved away." Willa's voice was wistful. "I suppose I have been lonely for a long time, even before Papa died." "I understand that," Owen said. "Loneliness can be the worst kind of pain sometimes." "Were you lonely?" Willa asked, glancing up at him. "Yes," Owen admitted. "I have friends at the various ranches where I work, but no one close. No family. I move around so much that I never build deep connections. It is a hollow way to live." "Then why do you live that way?" Owen considered the question. "I suppose because I did not know what else to do." After my parents died, I felt untethered. I worked wherever the jobs were, never staying long, never letting myself care too much about any place or person. It was easier than risking more loss. But you do not want to live that way anymore, Willa asked perceptively. No, Owen said. I do not. I want a place to call home. I want connections that matter. I want to build something lasting. He paused, then added quietly, I want to belong somewhere. So do I, Willa whispered. So do I. They had reached the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open prairie. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. They stood together watching it, and Owen felt that certainty wash over him again, stronger than ever. This woman, this moment, this was what he had been searching for without knowing it. Miss Greene, he said carefully. I know we have only just met, and I know you are grieving and vulnerable, but I need to tell you something. Willa turned to look at him, her expression open and trusting. What is it? When I heard you praying, something changed in me. I cannot explain it rationally, but I knew in that moment that finding you was important, that you were important, and that feeling has only grown stronger the more time I spend with you. Owen took a breath. I am not asking for anything. I just need you to know that I intend to stay in Quartz Hill. I intend to be here for you, to help you build the life you want. Not because I pity you, but because something in me recognizes something in you, and I cannot walk away from that. Willa stared at him, her eyes wide and shining in the fading light. I feel it too, she whispered. That recognition. When you appeared, it was like something inside me relaxed for the first time in years. Like I had been holding my breath and could finally exhale. I do not understand it, but I feel it. Then we do not have to understand it, Owen said. We just have to trust it. They stood there as the sun sank below the horizon, two lonely souls who had found each other against all odds, and something profound passed between them. Not love, not yet, but the promise of love, the potential for something deep and lasting and true. We should go back, Willa said eventually. It is getting dark, and I do not want to break Mrs. Patterson's rules on my first night. They walked back to the hotel in a silence that felt charged with possibility. At the door to the hotel, Owen stopped and took Willa's hand in his. Sleep well, Miss Greene, he said. Tomorrow we will start building your new life. Our new lives, Willa corrected gently. Yours and mine, together, whatever that means. Owen smiled, and it felt like the first real smile he had smiled in years. Together, he agreed, whatever that means. He watched her go inside, then went to find a place to sleep himself. Mrs. Patterson had offered him a room in exchange for work, and he decided to accept. He needed to be close, needed to be available if Willa needed him. The job breaking horses could wait. For the first time in 8 years, Owen Preston had found something more important than work and money. He had found purpose, and her name was Willa Greene. The next morning, Owen was up early, helping Mr. Patterson with repairs around the hotel. John Patterson was a taciturn man in his 50s, but he seemed to appreciate Owen's skill with tools and his willingness to work hard. By the time breakfast was served, Owen had already fixed a loose board on the front steps, oiled several squeaky door hinges, and repaired a broken window frame. He cleaned up quickly and made it to the dining room just as Willa came downstairs. She looked rested, though there were still shadows under her eyes. She smiled when she saw him, and Owen felt his heart do something strange in his chest. They ate breakfast together, a simple meal of eggs, biscuits, and coffee, served by Mrs. Patterson herself. The older woman watched them with sharp eyes, but Owen kept his behavior impeccably proper, very aware that Willa's reputation depended on discretion. After breakfast, Owen and Willa went to the dressmaking shop to inquire about work. The proprietress, a tiny woman with white hair and gnarled hands, introduced herself as Mrs. Adelaide Foster. She looked Willa over carefully. "You say you can sew?" she asked. "Yes, madam. My mother taught me. I can do basic dressmaking, alterations, and mending. I am not as fast as a professional, but I am neat and careful." "Show me." Mrs. Foster produced a piece of scrap fabric and a needle and thread, then gave Willa a series of tasks. "Hem this, make a buttonhole, do a French seam." Willa completed each task efficiently, her stitches small and even. Mrs. Foster examined the work with a critical eye, then nodded. "You will do. I can offer you $3 a week to start, plus meals. Hours are 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening, Monday through Saturday. You will take direction from me and you will treat customers with courtesy. Can you do that?" "Yes, madam," Willa said, relief flooding her face. "Thank you so much. When can I start?" "Monday. That gives you the rest of the week to settle in. Do you have appropriate work clothes?" Willa hesitated, and Owen knew she was mentally reviewing the limited contents of her trunk. "I have a few simple dresses. That will do for now. But you will want to make yourself at least 2 more work dresses, something sturdy that can withstand the wear. I will give you the fabric at cost and you can pay me back out of your wages." "That is very generous, Mrs. Foster. Thank you." As they left the shop, Willa was practically glowing. "I have a job," she said, wonder in her voice. "An actual job. I can support myself." "You certainly can," Owen said, feeling proud of her. "See, things are already falling into place." They spent the rest of the day exploring the town more thoroughly. Owen introduced Willa to the shopkeepers and the bank manager, making sure people knew she was a respectable woman who had suffered a tragedy, not some woman of questionable character. He could see the way people's attitudes shifted when they learned her story, suspicion replaced by sympathy. At the general store, the proprietor, a jovial man named Mr. Harris, offered Willa credit for any supplies she needed, to be paid back once she started earning wages. "Any friend of Owen Preston is a friend of mine," he said with a wink, though Owen had only met the man that morning. As they walked back toward the hotel, Willa slipped her hand into Owen's without seeming to think about it. Owen froze for a moment, very aware of the propriety issues, but then he gently squeezed her hand and kept walking. Let people talk. Willa needed support and he would provide it, regardless of gossip. "Thank you," Willa said softly, "for everything. I could not have done any of this without you." "You are stronger than you think," Owen said. "You would have figured it out eventually, maybe. But it would have been much harder and taken much longer, and I might have made desperate choices that I would regret." She looked up at him. "You were my answer, Mr. Preston. My prayer was heard and you were sent. I truly believe that." Owen did not know what to say to that. He had never been anyone's answer to anything before. It felt like a huge responsibility, but also like a gift. "Then I am grateful I was in the right place at the right time," he said finally. Over the next few days, Owen and Willa fell into a comfortable routine. Owen worked for the Pattersons during the day, and Willa prepared for her new job, making herself work dresses and organizing her few belongings. They took meals together in the hotel dining room, and in the evenings, they walked around town, talking about everything and nothing. Owen learned that Willa loved poetry and had memorized long passages from her mother's books. Willa learned that Owen could play the harmonica, though he had not touched one in years. They talked about their childhoods, their losses, their hopes for the future. With each conversation, they grew closer, the connection between them deepening from possibility into something real and tangible. On Sunday, they attended church together. The congregation was curious but welcoming, and the preacher, a kind man named Reverend Thomas, made a point of greeting Willa warmly and offering his condolences for her father's death. Several women invited Willa to join the ladies' social club, and Owen watched as she slowly began to build a place for herself in this community. That evening, as they sat on the hotel porch watching the stars come out, Willa said, "I feel like I am coming back to life. For so long I was just surviving, just putting one foot in front of the other, but now I am actually living again." "I know what you mean," Owen said. "I feel the same way." Willa turned to look at him, and in the dim light from the hotel windows her eyes were luminous. "Is it wrong that I am happy? Papa has only been gone a week. Should I not still be in mourning?" "Your father would want you to be happy," Owen said firmly. "You said yourself he worked himself to death trying to give you a good life. The best way to honor his memory is to live that good life." "I suppose you are right." Willa was quiet for a moment. "Owen, can I ask you something?" It was the first time she had used his first name, and Owen loved the way it sounded in her voice. "Of course. What are your intentions toward me?" Owen had been expecting this question, and he had given it a lot of thought. "My intentions are honorable," he said carefully. "I know it has only been a week, but I care about you, Willa, more than I probably should. I want to court you properly if you will allow it. I want to see where this connection between us leads, but I will not rush you or pressure you. You have been through too much, and you need time to grieve and adjust to your new life. I am willing to wait as long as necessary." Willa reached out and took his hand. "I care about you too," she said softly. "I know it is fast, and I know I am probably not thinking clearly because of everything that has happened, but when I am with you, I feel safe and happy and hopeful. I do not want you to wait. I want to see where this leads to." Owen brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture of courtship and promise. "Then we will see where it leads together." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, and Owen felt a peace he had never experienced before. For the first time since his parents died, he felt like he belonged somewhere. And that somewhere was wherever Willa Greene was. Willa started work at Mrs. Foster's shop on Monday, and Owen continued his work at the hotel while also taking on small jobs around town as his skills became known. He repaired saddles, fixed fences, helped build a new chicken coop for the schoolteacher. He became a familiar and well-liked presence in Quartz Hill, the reliable cowboy who could fix anything and was always willing to help. Every evening, after Willa finished work and Owen completed his jobs, they would meet and walk or sit together, continuing the slow, sweet process of getting to know each other. Owen told her about the cattle drives he had worked, the wild horses he had broken, the places he had seen. Willa told him about her mother's stories, her father's quiet pride, the small joys of her childhood before grief had overshadowed everything. A month after Willa arrived in Quartz Hill, Owen took her on a picnic outside of town. He borrowed a buggy from Mr. Patterson and packed a basket with food from the hotel kitchen. They drove out to a pretty spot near a creek, where cottonwood trees provided shade, and the sound of running water was soothing. As they ate cold chicken and fresh bread, Willa said, "I have been thinking about my father's grave. You said we could move him to the cemetery here if I wanted. Do you think we could do that?" "Of course," Owen said. "We can make the arrangements. It would be good to have him properly buried with a real headstone. I would like that. I want him to rest somewhere people visit, somewhere peaceful and cared for, not just alone on the prairie. We will make it happen. I promise." After they ate, they walked along the creek, and Owen showed Willa different plants and told her their uses. Which ones were good for eating, which ones had medicinal properties, which ones would make you sick. Willa listened intently, absorbing the knowledge like a sponge. "You know so much," she said admiringly. "How did you learn all this?" "Years of living rough," Owen said with a shrug. "When you work cattle drives and sleep under the stars more often than not, you learn what the land can provide. It is survival knowledge." "Teach me more," Willa said. I want to learn everything you know." So Owen taught her, and as he did, he fell deeper in love with this woman who was so eager to learn, so resilient in the face of tragedy, so genuinely kind to everyone she met. He had not planned to fall in love so quickly or so completely, but there was no fighting it. Willa Greene had become the center of his world. As the afternoon waned and they prepared to head back to town, Owen took both of Willa's hands in his. "Willa, I know it has only been a month, but I need to tell you something." "What is it?" she asked, though from her expression she already knew. "I love you," Owen said simply. "I am in love with you. I have been since the moment I saw you praying. I know it is fast, and I know we should probably take more time, but I cannot keep it inside anymore. I love you and I want to build a life with you." Willa's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I have been afraid to say it because I thought it was too soon, that people would think I was being disrespectful to my father's memory. But I cannot help how I feel. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Owen Preston." Owen pulled her into his arms, and they held each other as the sun began to set. It was the first time they had embraced, and it felt right and natural, like coming home. Owen breathed in the scent of her hair, felt the warmth of her body against his, and knew with absolute certainty that this was where he was meant to be. "Will you marry me?" he asked, the words coming out before he had consciously decided to say them. "I know it is soon, and I know I do not have much to offer you beyond hard work and devotion, but I promise I will spend every day of my life making you happy. Will you be my wife?" Willa pulled back just enough to look up at him, and her face was radiant with joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you. I do not care what anyone thinks or whether it is too soon. I know what I feel and I know what we have is real." Owen kissed her then, a gentle, reverent kiss that sealed their promise. It was Willa's first kiss, he realized, feeling the inexperience in her response, and he was honored to be the one to give it to her. He kept it sweet and chaste, very aware of her innocence and virtue. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling. "We should tell Mrs. Patterson when we get back," Willa said. "She has been so kind to me, I want her to hear it from us before the gossip starts." "Good idea, and we should tell Reverend Thomas too, ask him to perform the ceremony." "How soon?" Willa asked. "I do not want a long engagement. Is that wrong?" "There is nothing wrong with knowing what you want," Owen said. "What do you think is appropriate? We should respect mourning customs for your father." Willa considered. "Most people mourn for a year, but Papa would not have wanted me to put my life on hold for that long. He always said life was for the living. What if we wait 3 months from his death? That would be respectful but not excessively long." 3 months sounds reasonable," Owen agreed. "That will give us time to prepare properly." They drove back to town as the stars began to emerge, both of them giddy with happiness and plans for the future. Mrs. Patterson took the news with a knowing smile, as if she had expected this all along. "About time you made an honest declaration, Mr. Preston," she said with satisfaction. "I have been watching you two moon over each other for weeks." "When is the wedding?" "In 3 months," Willa said. "Is that too soon?" "It is your life, dear. If you are certain, then the timing is no one's business but yours. But be prepared for some gossip. People will talk." "Let them talk," Owen said firmly. "We know the truth, and that is all that matters." News of their engagement spread through Quartz Hill within days, and reactions were mixed. Most people were happy for them, offering congratulations and support. A few clucked their tongues about the impropriety of Willa marrying so soon after her father's death, but even the critics could not deny that Owen and Willa seemed genuinely in love. Mrs. Foster was pleased. "I am glad you found happiness, dear," she told Willa. "But I hope you will continue working for me after you marry. You are the best help I have had in years." "I would like that very much," Willa said, "if my husband does not object." "I do not object at all," Owen said when Willa asked him later. "I want you to do whatever makes you happy. If you enjoy the sewing work, you should keep doing it." Owen, meanwhile, had finally gone out to the Winters ranch to inquire about breaking horses. Henry Winters was a gruff but fair man in his 40s, and he was impressed by Owen's credentials and recommendations from previous employers. "I need someone who can handle Mustangs without breaking their spirit," Winters said. "I want them trained for riding, not ruined. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir," Owen said. "I believe in working with horses, not against them. They learn better when they trust you." "Good answer." "The job is yours if you want it. Pay is $50 a month, plus room and board if you need it." "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Winters, but I am getting married in 3 months, and I would prefer to live in town with my wife." "Would you be amenable to me coming out to work each day and returning to town each evening?" Winters considered. "That is a long commute each day, 10 miles round trip." "I do not mind, and I work fast. I can break a horse in days instead of weeks using my methods." "All right, we will try it. But if the commute interferes with your work, we will have to renegotiate." "Fair enough, sir. Thank you." Owen left the ranch feeling satisfied. $50 a month was excellent money, far more than he had been making doing odd jobs around town. Combined with Willa's wages from the sewing shop, they would be able to live comfortably and save for the future. He rode back to Quartz Hill and went straight to find Willa. She was just finishing work for the day, and her face lit up when she saw him. "I got the job," he told her. $50 a month. Willa threw her arms around him in an uncharacteristic display of public affection. "That is wonderful. Oh, Owen, everything is falling into place." "It truly is," he agreed, holding her close and not caring who saw. "We are building our life, Willa. Together, just like we planned." The next few months passed in a blur of preparation and happiness. Owen and Willa made arrangements to have her father's body moved to the Quartz Hill Cemetery, a process that required delicate handling but was accomplished with respect and care. They held a small memorial service, and Willa finally was able to properly grieve with a community of supportive people around her. The grave was marked with a simple but dignified headstone that read, "Wendell Greene, 1833–1882, beloved father." Willa cried when she saw it, but they were cleansing tears, the kind that brought relief rather than more pain. "Thank you," she told Owen as they stood beside the grave after the service. "Thank you for making sure he has a proper resting place." "He was your father," Owen said. "He deserves to be honored and remembered." Owen started his work at the Winters Ranch and proved his worth immediately. He had a gift with horses, an intuitive understanding of their minds and moods. Instead of breaking them through force and fear, he worked patiently, building trust and communication. The horses he trained were calm and reliable, not skittish or aggressive like those broken by harsher methods. Word of his skill spread, and soon other ranchers were asking if he would train their horses too. Owen took on select additional work, always making sure he had time for Willa and their wedding preparations. Willa continued her work at Mrs. Foster's shop and was becoming quite skilled. She had a good eye for style and could fit a dress to flatter any figure. Customers began requesting her specifically, and Mrs. Foster raised her wages to $4 a week in recognition of her value. The wedding was planned for a Saturday in October, 3 months and 1 week after Wendell Greene's death. It would be a simple ceremony in the church, followed by a small reception at the hotel. Mrs. Patterson offered to host the reception as her wedding gift, and several townspeople volunteered to bring food and help with decorations. Willa made her own wedding dress, a simple but elegant gown of cream-colored silk that Mrs. Foster provided at cost. It had long sleeves, a high neckline, and a fitted bodice, perfectly appropriate for a respectable widow's daughter. Willa worked on it in the evenings, her stitches tiny and precise, pouring love into every seam. Owen, meanwhile, used some of his savings to buy a small house on the edge of town. It needed work, but it was sound and had 3 rooms. A main living area with a kitchen, a bedroom, and a small second room that could be used for storage or, eventually, a nursery. Owen spent every spare moment fixing it up, repairing the roof, replacing broken windows, scrubbing floors, and painting walls. Willa helped when she could, and they worked side by side, dreaming aloud about their future. They talked about children, about growing old together, about building a life that mattered. Every conversation, every shared task, deepened their love and commitment to each other. The week before the wedding, Willa confided her nervousness to Owen as they walked in the evening. "I am so happy," she said, "but I am also scared. What if I am not a good wife? What if I disappoint you?" Owen stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Willa, you could never disappoint me. I am not marrying you because I expect you to be perfect. I am marrying you because I love you, all of you, exactly as you are. We will figure out married life together, and we will make mistakes, but we will learn from them. That is what marriage is, growing together." "I love you so much," Willa said, tears gathering in her eyes. "I never thought I could be this happy. When Papa died, I thought my life was over. But then you found me and everything changed. You are my miracle, Owen." "And you are mine," Owen said, pulling her into his arms. "We are each other's miracles." They stood there under the stars, holding each other, and Owen sent up a silent prayer of thanks for the day he had heard a woman crying on the prairie. That moment had changed his life, had given him purpose and love and a future. He would spend the rest of his days being grateful for it. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, with the crisp coolness of October in the air. Owen dressed in his best clothes, a new suit he had purchased specially for the occasion. His hands shook slightly as he tied his tie, nervous energy making him clumsy. Mr. Patterson noticed and chuckled. "Steady there, son," the older man said. "You look like you are about to face a firing squad, not marry the woman you love." "I just want everything to be perfect for her," Owen said. "It will be perfect because you are there," Mr. Patterson said. "That is all she wants." At the church, Owen waited at the altar with Reverend Thomas, watching as the pews filled with townspeople. He was touched by how many had come to support them. In just a few months, he and Willa had become part of this community, woven into the fabric of Quartz Hill life. Then the music started, and Willa appeared at the back of the church. Owen's breath caught in his throat. She was radiant, her dark hair adorned with a few simple flowers, her cream dress catching the light from the windows. But it was the expression on her face that undid him, the pure joy and love shining in her honey-colored eyes. She walked down the aisle alone, having no one to give her away, but she held her head high with dignity and grace. When she reached Owen, he offered her his arm, and they turned together to face the Reverend. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They spoke their vows clearly and firmly, promising to love, honor, and cherish each other in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, until death parted them. Owen slipped a simple gold band onto Willa's finger, and she placed one on his. They had chosen matching rings, a symbol of their equality and partnership. When Reverend Thomas pronounced them husband and wife and invited Owen to kiss his bride, Owen cupped Willa's face gently and kissed her with all the love in his heart. It was a chaste kiss, appropriate for church, but it held promise and commitment and joy. The congregation applauded, and Owen and Willa walked back down the aisle as Mr. and Mrs. Owen Preston, both of them beaming with happiness. The reception at the hotel was a joyful affair. There was plenty of food, some music from local musicians, and lots of well wishes and congratulations. Owen danced with his new wife, holding her close and marveling that she was truly his now, bound to him before God and community. As the afternoon turned to evening, Owen and Willa finally slipped away from the celebration to walk to their new home. Owen carried Willa over the threshold, making her laugh, and they stood together in the main room of their house, looking around at the space they had worked so hard to prepare. "Welcome home, Mrs. Preston," Owen said softly. "Welcome home, Mr. Preston," Willa replied, wrapping her arms around his waist. They spent their first night as husband and wife in their own home, and it was everything Owen had dreamed of. Willa was nervous but trusting, and Owen was patient and gentle, showing her the physical expression of the love they had been building for months. It was sweet and tender and right, the consummation of their vows and the beginning of their life as one. The next morning, Owen woke with Willa in his arms and felt a contentment so profound it was almost painful. This was what he had been searching for without knowing it, this sense of belonging, this partnership, this love. He pressed a kiss to Willa's forehead and she stirred, opening her eyes and smiling at him. "Good morning, husband," she murmured. "Good morning, wife," he replied. They lay there for a while, just enjoying being together, talking quietly about nothing important and everything important all at once. Finally, hunger drove them out of bed, and they made breakfast together, working around each other in the small kitchen with surprising ease. As they ate, Willa said, "I want to do something to honor Papa and show gratitude for how our lives turned out. What if we saved money and helped other people who are in difficult situations? We could set aside a portion of our income to help newcomers to town or people who have fallen on hard times. We could call it the Willa Greene Fund." Owen reached across the table and took her hand. "That is a beautiful idea," he said. "Your father's legacy could be helping others the way I helped you. He would like that." So they did. As months turned into years, Owen and Willa Preston became known not just for their love for each other but for their generosity and compassion. The Willa Greene Fund helped dozens of people get back on their feet, find work, secure housing, and start new lives. It was administered quietly, without fanfare, just as Wendell himself had been a quiet man. Owen continued his work breaking horses and gained a reputation as the best horse trainer in Wyoming territory. Ranchers from hundreds of miles away sought his services, and while the money was good, he never let work take priority over his marriage. He made sure to be home every evening, to share meals with Willa, to talk and laugh and maintain the deep connection they had built. Willa continued working at Mrs. Foster's shop until the older woman retired and sold the business to Willa and Owen. Willa ran it successfully, eventually hiring help as orders increased. She became known for her skill and her fair treatment of employees, and the shop prospered. 2 years after their wedding, Willa gave birth to their first child, a robust boy they named Wendell Henry Preston, honoring both Willa's father and Owen's first employer in Quartz Hill. Holding his son for the first time, Owen was overwhelmed with love and gratitude and determination to be the best father he could be. 3 years later, a daughter arrived, whom they named Sarah Mee Preston after both of their mothers. She had her mother's honey-colored eyes and her father's determined chin, and from the moment she was born, she had both of her parents wrapped around her tiny fingers. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters, difficult births, illness, and loss. But through everything, Owen and Willa faced each challenge together, their love growing deeper and stronger with each year that passed. They never forgot that moment on the prairie when their lives had intersected, when a desperate prayer had been answered by a wandering cowboy. It became the foundation story of their family, told to their children and eventually their grandchildren. A reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments, and that prayers are often answered in unexpected ways. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Owen and Willa stood at Willa Greene's grave, now surrounded by well-tended grass and flowers. The cemetery had grown over the years, but Willa's grave remained one of the best maintained, visited regularly by the daughter who loved him and the son-in-law who had never met him but honored his memory. "Thank you, Papa," Willa said softly, laying flowers on the grave. "Thank you for raising me to be strong. Thank you for bringing me here, even though it cost you your life. I've had a good life, and you are part of the reason for that." Owen stood beside her, his arm around her waist, and added his own silent thanks. This man had given him the greatest gift imaginable by raising the woman who would become his wife, his partner, his love. As they walked back toward town, their hands linked as they had been for 25 years, Owen said, "You ever think about that day I found you? How different our lives would be if I had ridden a different route, or if I had been an hour earlier or later?" "I think about it often," Willa said. "But I do not believe it was chance. I prayed for help and you were sent. It was meant to be, Owen. We were meant to find each other." "I believe that too," Owen said. "I have believed it from the moment I heard you crying. Something in me knew you were important, that our meeting mattered, and I was right." They reached their home, which had grown over the years from 3 rooms to 6, expanding to accommodate their growing family. Their children were grown now, Wendell working as a horse trainer alongside his father, and Sarah married to a good man and expecting her first child. But the house was still filled with love and laughter when the family gathered. As Owen and Willa sat on their porch that evening, watching the sun set over Quartz Hill, they held hands and reflected on the life they had built together. From that desperate moment on the prairie to this peaceful evening on their porch, they had traveled a remarkable journey. "I love you, Willa Preston," Owen said, as he had said countless times over the years. "I love you, Owen Preston," Willa replied, as she always did, the words never losing their meaning or power. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, the same stars that had witnessed their first meeting, their first kiss, their wedding night. The stars had seen everything, and they would continue to watch over the Preston family for generations to come. Owen thought back to that younger version of himself, riding alone across Wyoming territory, searching without knowing what he was searching for. If he could go back and tell that lonely cowboy what the future held, what would he say? That in just a few miles, he would hear a woman crying and praying for help. That he would know, instantly and certainly, that he was meant to help her. That she would become his wife, his love, the center of his world. That from that one moment of answered prayer, an entire life would bloom, rich and full and meaningful. Would he have believed it? Probably not. Some things you have to experience to understand. But he did not need to go back and tell his younger self anything. That man had trusted his instincts, had followed his heart, and had made the right choice. Everything that followed, all the joy and love and family and purpose, had flowed from that single decision to help a woman in distress. "What are you thinking about?" Willa asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "Just how grateful I am," Owen said. "For everything. For you, for our children, for this life we built. I was lost before I found you, Willa. I did not even realize how lost I was until I found my way home." "You are not lost," Willa said gently. You were on a journey that led you exactly where you needed to be at exactly the right time. God guided you to me, Owen, and He guided me through grief and fear until you arrived. We were both where we needed to be. Then I am grateful for the journey, Owen said. Even the hard parts, because they led me to you. They sat together until the sky was fully dark and the chill of the evening drove them inside. They climbed into the bed they had shared for 25 years, and Owen pulled Willa close, her head resting on his shoulder as it had countless nights before. "Good night, my love," Willa murmured, already half asleep. "Good night, my answered prayer," Owen whispered back. And as he drifted off to sleep, Owen thought once more about that day on the prairie, about a woman praying and a cowboy listening, about divine intervention or pure chance or whatever force had brought them together. It did not matter what you called it. What mattered was that it had happened, that two lonely souls had found each other in the vast wilderness, and that from that meeting, love had grown. Owen and Willa Preston would live many more years in Quartz Hill, Wyoming. They would see their grandchildren born and watch the town grow and change around them. They would face challenges and celebrate triumphs, always together, always united by the bond forged in that moment on the prairie. And when they were finally laid to rest, side by side in the cemetery near Willa Greene's grave, their headstone would read, "Owen and Willa Preston, beloved husband and wife. They found each other when they needed it most, and they never let go." It was the truth, simple and profound, the story of two people who had been lost and found, alone and together, hopeless and blessed. It was a love story born from desperation and faith, from a prayer spoken into the wind and a cowboy who heard it. And it was exactly the life they were meant to live, exactly the love they were meant to share. The answer to a prayer, the fulfillment of a promise, the proof that sometimes when you need help most desperately, the universe provides exactly what you need. Owen Preston had been that answer for Willa Greene, and Willa had been the answer for Owen, the home and purpose and love he had been searching for without knowing it. Together, they had built something beautiful and lasting, a family and a legacy that would endure for generations. Their story became legend in Quartz Hill, told to newcomers and shared among old friends. It became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, help can arrive unexpectedly. That prayers are heard, that love can bloom in the most unlikely circumstances. And somewhere in heaven, Willa Greene smiled, knowing that his daughter had found happiness, that his death had not been in vain, that his legacy lived on through the family Willa and Owen had built, and the fund that bore his name. He had brought his daughter to Quartz Hill seeking a fresh start, and though he had not lived to see it, that fresh start had been more wonderful than he could have imagined. The story of Owen and Willa Preston was not just a love story. It was a testament to faith, to hope, to the power of compassion and human connection. It was proof that sometimes the greatest blessings come from the greatest sorrows, and that love, when it is true and deep and committed, can overcome anything. And it all began with a woman praying for direction, and a cowboy who knew, immediately and certainly, that he was the answer she sought.